Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us today. My name is Barrett Louie and part of the marketing team here at RiskIQ. We're excited you were able to join us today. We'll be exploring methodologies for threat analysis, walk through mobile app and phishing investigations, and work through hands-on exercises. But before we get started, there are a couple housekeeping notes. First, today's workshop is being recorded. Second, today's session will be interactive. Throughout the workshop, we'll be unmuting lines for questions and conversation. If you have a question while your line is muted, please send them through the questions window in the GoToWebinar control panel. The team will answer as many as we can as we go. Now, let me introduce you to the team that's here to support you today. First, Benjamin Powell. Benjamin is RiskIQ's Director of Technical Marketing and will be leading today's workshop. Next, there are a couple other folks here to answer any questions you may have. Alexandra Monk, who is RiskIQ's Solution Architect, and Jacqueline Witter, who is our Senior Events Manager. And with that, I'll hand it off to Benjamin.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. I'm going to make this really interactive today, and based upon feedback on topics that you wanted to see, I'm going to go into some mobile app information, like go into our database and show you the type of information that we have. It's not seen inside of Passive Total. This is in our platform. So if you purchase mobile app protection, we can look at your mobile apps and then also see if anybody's infringing on your mobile apps. But this database is very valuable because we're going to be able to go and look at popular apps and see how people are exploiting them and taking even your free apps and maybe turning around and making money off of them. So we're going to go through and look at those. And then the other question that people had was, how can I visualize my investigation? So I'm going to use a tool called Maltego, and I'm going to take an investigation we did last week. We're going to review it, and then we're going to visualize it so you can see how that is. And then we're going to do some live phishing examples where we're going to go through and do those. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to explain the promo code. So for example, right now on the screen, you can see the promo code of vrthw-mobile. This code will give you enterprise access for 1 week. So you'll have every data set and full history going back to the beginning of time that we've collected it. We have over 10 years worth of history. And with those different levels of accounts that we have in the system, I wanted to explain what those are. So free community accounts that are created using a free email account like a Gmail or a Yahoo, you're only going to see 14 days worth of history in certain data sets. We haven't vetted you as like a real security professional. So if you sign up using your organization's email, then we give you services because we kind of keep that a little bit safe. So if there's a vulnerability or a particular port that might have an issue, we don't want you to be able to go out and search that for the entire world unless we know that you're really working for an organization. And so with that, we give you 90 days worth of history so you can see more information, but you also get that services. Now, if you're an enterprise user that you have a paid account, you have everything. And right now that you're in the trial, you have access to everything. So all of our advanced data sets, and we're going to be using those to be able to make infrastructure change to figure out all the pieces that make up the infrastructure of a threat actor so you know the complete picture. So we'll go through and we'll do all of those. Now, these promo codes, you're going to be, if you sign up with a organizational email, you're automatically put into a 30-day trial. So if you have a free account and you go and create a new account using your corporate email, you'll go into a 30-day trial. Otherwise, please use the promo code that I'm giving you today. Otherwise, you won't see certain data sets, or you could run out of queries. Now, if you have to create your own a new account, you can go to community.riskiq.com/registration, and you can add this promo code today, but you'll automatically be put into a 30-day trial, and this is only a 7-day promo code. So if you have an account already, an easy way to add the promo code is in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see account settings. If you select that, there's a section where there's a promo code. And if you've attended a previous workshop, You've probably entered it before. If not, click on the little promo code area and type, it's case sensitive, VRTHW for Virtual Threat Hunting Workshop -mobile. Now, I also want to point out in the same section, because there's been some questions in the past where somebody goes, the email frequency. I'm getting emailed articles or different, like if I set up a monitor inside of a project, how do I determine how frequently I'm going to get an email, or if I don't want to get them at all? It's in that same section. So there's an email notification frequency. I want you to see that. So if you do need to tweak it, this is where you tweak that, okay? So if you want to opt out from getting email notification, this is where you do it, okay? So the tools that we're going to be using today will be RiskIQ Passive Total. Now, when I go into the mobile app place, that is in our platform that's not part of Passive Total. And I'm going to be going into the admin view of it, where I can search for any mobile app for any company anywhere in the world. And we have over 30 million mobile apps in there. And so that piece you won't have access to, but I'd like you to suggest some mobile apps that you might want me to look at. I have a big suggestion list already where I have some good examples, but as we go through, if there's other ones you want to see, please put in the chat, hey, look at this mobile app, and we'll bring it up and we'll take a look at it to see if it's okay, or if it has excessive permissions, or if it's malicious. So this could be your own organization, so we can look to see what else is out there in the world, or it could be something that you have on your phone. Now, if you ever install a mobile app that on a jailbroke phone, or from an app store that might have free APKs or something, you probably have malware on your phone, and we're going to go through and show you that. Okay. Now, we're also going to be using some other tools like Google Safe Browsing to check to see if something's on the blacklist or not. URL Scan.io to maybe look at the image of how it looked like in the past. Now, those types of things we have in our system automatically, but in Passive Total, they're not exposed. They're exposed into our digital footprint and external threat products. So we'll go through and we'll show you those types of things. So a little bit about myself. I'm Benjamin Powell. I'm the Director of Technical Marketing. I've worked in IT for over 30 years, running security and network teams. I've worked for the state of California, Port of San Diego. We also had the San Diego International Airport. Financial services, I worked for First American Credco. We did 30% of the credit reports for the nation. I did network and security there. I had teams there. Manufacturing, biotech, and then I went over and started working for startups. Now, fun fact about me, I enjoy spear phishing, but when I tell that to people in our industry, they don't want to take my emails anymore. And if you look in the background of me, there's some of my spear guns, and this is one of the latest fish I caught out in San Diego off La Jolla. This was a 36-inch halibut. So that's a fun fact, and you have my LinkedIn if you want to link up. But remember that this is a we try to make this as interactive as possible. We used to do these in person, but with COVID, we've had to stop. But I want you to stop me, ask me questions if you have a question. We'll try to answer in the chat. Otherwise, if it's a really good question, Alex is going to stop me and ask it, and then I can answer your question, and it might take us down a different path. So I really want to make sure that you do that. So today we're going to look at mobile apps, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So the good are the good apps that are out there. The bad ones are the malicious ones, and the ugly ones might have excessive permissions on there. So we want to look to see what's out there. And as an administrator for an organization, you know, if an executive tells you they want a particular application, generally you just give it to them because there's no way to check, but we can actually check and do those things. So I'm going to show you the capabilities that we have. And then we're going to look at Pinchy Spider that we did last week. We're going to review that investigation, and then we're going to go into Maltego. And live, I'm going to map it out and show you how you can visualize that infrastructure and see some of the similarities and the connections that you normally wouldn't see right off the bat if you're using Passive Total, because there's a lot of data sometimes, and to understand which thing connects to which piece in the infrastructure is hard to see. But when you visualize it, you start to understand it might be the same threat actor doing a lot of this stuff. And then I have a bunch of phishing examples, and I'm going to show you how to see these, and we update them all the time, so you can go there and update your skills. But the techniques that we're going to use, you can go to any domain and use these techniques to find people that might be attacking you. So that's the big thing I want to bring across. So before we begin, I'm going to ask Barrett to do some poll questions. And the reason for these poll questions are that I want to find out what area of the organization you work for, so I can make that perspective when I'm talking to you, but then also to see what level of threat investigator you are, or hunter, and to determine what type of thing, organization you work for, and different aspects that might give me a different slant on how I should present. So Barrett, if you can kick off the first poll question, let's begin. Okay, what type of passive total account are you using? Are you using the free email? Are you using the corporate email or the paid enterprise account? I just want to know, because if you're using the free or the corporate email, I really want to make sure you put in that promo code, because you're going to do a lot of queries today and you're going to run out if you've created the account a while back. Okay, so about a quarter of you are using the free email account. Majority of you have the corporate email account. Great. Still make sure you add that promo code in there. And before we do our first example, I'll show you again where to put that in if you have a problem. Okay, and 11% are using the paid. Great. Have you attended a previous threat hunting workshop, whether in person or virtual? Okay, about 44% have, and about 56 haven't. So when I go through, I'll really explain the data sets and how they're used in the pivoting and go over the screen real quick. Okay. Okay, okay, we want to find out when we can bring these back live, where we can do them regionally, meet you, and then you can meet your colleagues and build up your Rolodex of people that you can turn to if there's an issue. So please answer when you would feel comfortable going back to a live workshop. Okay, so majority second quarter of next year, very conservative in the first quarter of next year. So that's about the time period that we were thinking as well. Okay, great. Okay, what type of investigation I'd like to see? And the reason why I asked this is that we've been doing these weekly, we call them summer school. And every week it's new examples, new things. So I want to find out what topics you might want to see. Like last week, you wanted to see mobile apps. So that's why I'm doing it this week. Okay, how to take down bad stuff. That was the top one last week. So next week we're going to do it. Talk about the takedowns. Okay, domain infringement and malware, mage cart. Okay, perfect. Okay. Okay, have any of you used Maltego before to visualize data? They have a community version and paid versions. Okay, about 44% yes, 56 no. Okay. So is your organization using our RiskIQ digital footprint to map out your attack surface and understand everything that you have externally, how it links together, websites, hosts, partners, resources that you're using? Okay, 100% no. So one thing is that if you like to get a free snapshot of how your organization looks like, Barrett will put into the chat a link for you to sign up to get a free snapshot of your organization to see what's out there. So some of the stuff that we're doing, I'll link over and show you those types of things that you can do. Okay.
Benjamin, that's it for the poll questions.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Barrett. Okay. Okay. So since about half of you haven't attended one of these workshops, I'm just going to quickly run through some background so you understand how we gather the data, types of data that we gather, and then we're going to jump right into some examples. So RiskIQ goes out to all the IP4 space on a regular basis. We communicate to the IP addresses, the domains. We collect over 220 different ports, and we come out from 150 different countries, from commercial, residential, and mobile IP space. We appear as every type of device, every type of browser in order to become the intended victim. So I say we act like your parents on the internet. We do things to make if there's anything bad, malware or bad JavaScripts or something, we want to try to trigger those and see those. So then we have that ability to tell you what's happening. And because we're coming out like a real user, things that are targeted to the user we see. So if something's on a website, we're able to have that full document object model and bring that in. Now, we simulate a real user. So with that, we might go to a search engine. We might search for something. And then from there, we go on some of those links, and then we spider out. We keep cookies. We keep session. We're able to make it appear like a real user. And it's not like we scroll through everything. We might do a website from 4 or 5 different crawlers, grabbing different components and bringing those together to give you the full aspect and picture of what's happening. And then with that, we save the document object model, the links, the console messages, the cookies, the dependent requests and files. All those things that appear that the user gets, we have. So with those unique ports and services, we're able to basically create this internet intelligence graph. So we already know how everything is interconnected on the internet. So when you pull in an image from Facebook, you're sending data out to Google Analytics, we map all that out and we already have it done. So then it's easy for us to chain everything together. So if you start off with a piece of malware, we're able then to chain it together to give you all of the components that make that up. And we call this infrastructure chaining. Now, we've just launched our threat intel portal, where we take open source intelligence articles, and inside those articles, there might be indicators of compromise or indicators, just regular indicators. We'll take those from the pictures, from the text, and we make it into our system that you can actually just click on them. And so what we found was when we talked to analysts, a majority of their time was taking these open source articles, coming to Passive Total and searching inside of there to see if it affects their organization or the full extent of this threat. And so what we wanted to do was to jumpstart your capabilities. So instead of you having to type these in from pictures and stuff and spend a lot of time, we made it that you can just click on them and run those queries automatically inside of Passive Total. But we extended it. So we have actually researchers from the research lab and threat investigators that look at these threat publications, these open source intelligence publications, and add additional indicators using Passive Total. We'll go through and extend them out. So if we started off with those open source intelligence things that were published, maybe they didn't have a full picture of what was happening, or things have changed since the publication. So we're able then to add these indicators, and these are available to the paid users. We call these enterprise published indicators. And these give you the capability of seeing that full extent of what's there without having to go through and do that. So it completely jumpstarts your investigation. You don't have to go through and figure that out. We've done it for you, so you can start at that point and look at it. So with this trial that we're using, you're going to be able to see all those things. So please make sure that you have that code in there, and we'll go through and see one in a little bit. So we also have 10 years worth of data. So we can go back in time and see all that. So as this data gets collected, it comes in and we're looking at over 250,000 newly observed domain resolutions each day. And with those new domains that are purchased, they might not go online right away, but we start monitoring them and we go, okay, that was purchased. Oh, it's now on a park domain. Oh, now it's on a real IP address. Now it's under construction. Now it has images. Oh, it's now email capable. And we start seeing these things change over time. And we're looking at the IP resolutions, the passive DNS. We do about 2 billion web requests a day, and all the open ports that we see, how they change. And when you look at the services inside of Passive Total, that's the last 14 days of ports that we've seen. And then we have over 30 million mobile apps, and we look at over 300 mobile app stores. So as that data comes in, we have our threat researchers that find something new, interesting. And then they're capable of talking with the data scientists and say, okay, as we merge the data in, so think of it this way. We have a list of everything happened for the last 10 years, and we're collecting new data every day. So now, at the next day, we take what is new and we take what we had previously and we merge that together. When we do that merge, we can go back to the beginning of time and add a new data type. We can do a new type of analysis to figure out if there's any correlations. And then that becomes the new data set for the next day that everybody uses. So we can roll back a new data type or a new field back to the beginning of time because we can do this every day. And it's getting to the point that we're going to be doing it every hour. So it's even faster. So when that comes in, we can pull out all the different data elements because we're collecting this. It's not a feed. So the whois, the passive DNS, the crawls, the mobile apps, the certificates that we see, the services, all that stuff comes in, and those are our internet data sets. And then we have derived data sets. Now these derived data sets might be a list, like give me all the newly observed domains that you saw today, or anything that is a 0 day, or a accomplice list, which means you're hosting something or referencing something that's bad. Scam lists, IoT lists, we have all these different types of things as well. So what does that mean to you? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to make you smarter. And this is the cyber kill chain. And the earlier you can find something and stop it, the cost less and the impact to your organization's less. Most people are spending most of their time and effort from the firewall in because that's what you can see and can control. And we're trying to move you further earlier in that stack to say, hey, when the domain gets purchased, that's typo squatted, okay, we should start looking at it then. Oh, now it has your images. Oh, that's domain infringement. Oh, it's email capable. Now it could be phishing. So during the setup and the weaponization on the open web, that's where we see these things and are able to stop them before they become a problem. And we call that the security gap, from the recon setup and weaponization to when they can actually deliver that exploit and attack your organization. And we also partner with Flashpoint to bring in the deep and dark web. So when they start discussing, hey, does anybody have any accounts for a remote desktop in these organizations that we can use, we can find those for you and warn you. So as these things progress, as the attack progresses, we're able to see them and stop them before they can really take action. And we can usually do it 1 to 4 days before it is enabled to hurt your organization. So it's really proactive. And then we continue to monitor it. So if it comes back again, we're able to say, oh, it's now moved to this new IP, this new domain, a different hosting provider, and we're able to stop it and take it down. So if we put it on our blacklist, within 10 to 15 minutes, Google and Microsoft take our blacklist and put it in production, no questions asked. So 95% of the world's browsers can't go there. And then if you have our takedown services, we can actually have somebody contact the registrar and the hosting provider to take it down, and that takes usually 1 to 4 days. Okay? So the cool thing about all of us playing on the same battlefield is that you can't avoid the internet. If you're on the internet, you're on the internet. And everything you do, if you're looking for those signals, you can collect them and you can figure out what's happening. So if we take a look at a threat actor and a targeted user, what signals are they emitting? So think of it right now, you're at home, you're on an internet connection, you might be using a phone, you might be using a laptop or a tablet, you might be a hardwired connection or wireless. You're emitting signals. So just from being on the internet, you have an IP address, a net block, autonomous system, and an internet service provider. Okay, and if you're collecting that, we know your IP address and where you are. So then when you create an email, they'll know, hey, what email provider, the subject, the message body, the language that you use to create it in, and the email timestamps of when you create it and when you send it. Now, when that goes across the internet, we get all the transit IPs and all that information and the autonomous systems that they pass through. And then it gets to the end, and if it's a HTML email, it might go back to the threat actor where they can fingerprint your machine, find out if you read it, they can find out the type of machine you're using, and get if operating system and even your location. So this is all the things that are out there. So we're gathering this all the time, but we can't be everywhere all the time monitoring every single thing. So there's gaps. There's always gaps in our analysis. So as you're going through, you need to think about that and go, okay, if somebody puts up a phishing page and targets somebody and then immediately takes it down before you can see it, did it really happen? Yes, it happened, but there might not be any evidence of it. So all the pieces that we put together, we can figure out these chains, and then we can get some analytical leads. And we always say that you need 3 solid analytical leads. You might have a suspicion about something, but as you go through and you start figuring things out, you really need to have like 3 points to be able to make a good determination that this is really good or it's just suspicious, okay? And we'll go through that and we'll explain it, okay? Now you can be doing the same things internally. So if you're gathering your firewall logs, you have some EDR that's running, you're gathering all the system processes, who's doing what, where they're visiting, what's happening. You have that intelligence to link the inside with the outside and to get a full 360-degree view of what's happening. And if you have questions about this, we can even show you examples. So the data sets. The traditional data sets are what most people are familiar with. And this is passive DNS, the domain and IP address at that moment in time. And if it's DHCP'd, if the machine goes offline, comes back online, might have a new IP. The WHOIS information. This is who registered that domain. And since GDPR, a lot of that information has been redacted. You can't see it, but we have 10 years worth of history. So we actually have some older data that we can do it, or somebody might use a real telephone number and that telephone number is not redacted, or an email address. And we're able to go back and piece that together and link it to other sites. The DNS. DNS is important. So we always had this, but we always just showed you the A records. The IP address that was the domain was associated with what IP in the DNS records. But there's the MX records, there's other types of records. And threat actors got to the point where if they reuse the same IP address for a malicious act, we're able to easily link that together. So they started to define their DNS servers to say, only this part of the IP addresses range you're going to use. And then for this attack, we're not going to overlap. We're only going to do this. But they're using the same name servers and the same back end. So we're able to link this together. So it's really important to have that. And then all the subdomains and the hashes. The hashes we're looking at, virus total, we're looking at emerging threats, other types of things. So the other piece to look at is what's in a web page. And because we know what's in the web page and the pieces that we can grab out of it, we're able to create some new data sets to link data together that you might have not seen before. So if we looked at passive total, so this is an old version of our website, but I'm going to go through and walk through like what type of stuff we see. So passivetotal.org, if we looked at the response of the document object model, this is what comes back. This is like if you viewed the site on your in your browser. Now we have all the links, so everything it links to. So if you're going to have any links off the main page, Now, when we visited there with our crawler, it went on HTTP, but then it was redirected to HTTPS. And we have a special font that we use, and this is where that font was pulled in from, the JavaScript. So we see all those types of links, and this is how we're able to start building that infrastructure chain and make that internet intelligence graph. So the other thing are the cookies.
Benjamin?
Yes.
Hey, sorry, I had a question from the group. When it comes to those links that come up, when you go and create rules for that, is the crawler able to go from like link to link to link within a URL page, or is it, just limited to like the first link that they see?
So it all depends. So like we can do a mini crawl that just hits the main root link, or we can do a full crawl where we go down and spider down all the different links and see them all. So that's a great question. So for example, if we are doing JavaScript protection with us, where we're monitoring your JavaScripts to see if anybody has added malicious code inside of there. If you're only doing the root one and somebody went to the checkout page, which is off of the root, you might not see it. So it's really important to be able to do that. But when we go through and we're crawling the internet, we're crawling all these links and linking them together. But we can also monitor on a regular basis, very high frequency, to look at your own stuff, and that becomes that digital footprint that I mentioned that you can sign up for. That one is a snapshot, which is a single point in time, but we can have it as an ongoing basis to show you exactly what you have, how it looks like, and how it's changing over time. Alex, you keeping me honest? Am I missing anything?
No, you explained it perfectly. Thanks, Benjamin.
Okay, thanks. So we also bring in the cookies. And what's really funny about cookies is a couple years ago, cookies wasn't part of our data set. We had them in the back end, but it wasn't something that you could search in passive total. And there was a threat actor, Turla, that was using satellites to transmit data over the sky and picking up over on a receiver. So they find an IP address of somebody that's using satellite, and they replicate that infrastructure, that IP address, and then they go and they infect people and say, send the data back to the legitimate IP address. And when it does, it goes over the satellite, and the real company would block it and the hacker would receive it. But after a year of investigation, they found out a cookie could illuminate all that infrastructure that was affected and show all the people that were all that infrastructure at one point. So it gave us the capability of seeing that, so we went retroactively and created these cookies. So in our case, we're using AWS and Woopra for our chat inside of Passive Total. So you can see those in there. And then we also bring in the certificate. So what's really cool is that if you look at who is records, there might have been a name, an address, a business, all those types of fields, which are redacted. But inside of the certificate, those fields might exist and might be used. So then I can use those to link infrastructure together like I did with who is. So a lot of people that aren't familiar with what the certificates hold, it's a lot of information. You can see in here the country, the state, the organization, if it's a wildcard domain, and everything that's associated with it. So you can see all that in there. And this is all searchable within Passive Total. So our enterprise data sets have certificates, trackers, host pairs. That's the child-parent relationship with what's coming in and what's going out of the websites, the web components, and the cookies and the exposed services. The web components, threat actor might have a bad piece of malware or code that runs on the machine. If we see it, we know you're infected. Or you might have a certain version of Jenkins that might have a vulnerability that the threat actor can go after. So you can actually look at the world and look at yourself. And then the exposed services are the ports and the header banners that are coming back. And that's something new that we just added in the last few months. So with that, we're going to jump in, and I'm going to do the mobile app stuff first, because this is going to like set the mood. And then we're going to go do an investigation on one of these mobile app vendors and see some phishing and different things that are attacking them. So this is a picture from one of the dashboards of our backend system showing you how many active apps we have, how many stores that we currently see out on the internet, and how many we're actively pulling the information from. So there's 12 different languages, 8 different platforms, 130 different active stores. And I just did this screenshot a little bit earlier. But if you notice, there's different colors on these graphs over here. And you'll see official, affiliate, secondary, and hybrid. So official is what everybody thinks about when you think about a mobile app store. Google Play, Apple mobile app store. But there's a lot more. So an affiliate one might be something like if Nokia, for example, had an affiliate one, they don't have the actual apps in their app store, but they link to the real app store. Okay. Hybrid will have copies, it might have some copies of some apps, and they might have links to the official ones. Okay. And the secondary app store will have copies of the apps, but they're not the real official app stores. So we're going to go through and look at some of these, okay? And so I have some examples that we can look at. So I'm just going to bring up I have a text message in here, so I can have some different ones. So I have some for streaming, communication, sports, transportation, shopping, and finance. So I'm going to bring up my browser. Okay. So what I've done is I've logged into one of our platform that has the digital footprint piece, and in this workspace, it had the mobile app piece. And this is, as I'm an admin in here, I get to see all the apps in all the app stores, and I can look at this inventory. So the 30 million plus mobile apps, and as you can see, there's this add to inventory. So the way that this works is that if you get our mobile app protection, we find your real apps first and we add them to the inventory. And now that we know what you have inside the APK, the files that you're using and the URLs that are being used, then if anybody is infringing upon your mobile apps, we see those and we're able to detect it, and then we can do takedowns and get them offline. So this gives us the capability of looking at, for example, one of the biggest scams that I saw, and it's probably some teenager did this making money, was taking a free app, changing the number and saying, hey, it's new and improved, putting it on another app store and charging $1 for it and making money off of your mobile app. Okay, so that was a big scam that we've seen. Another one is somebody might take your mobile app, put it on one of these app stores that are in a different country, it's a secondary app store where the file's actually kept there, and they add some permissions in there, or they put some malware in there. And now somebody downloads it, and now they're infected. So the things that we're going to be looking at are mostly Android apps today on the Android platform. But Apple, we see the metadata. We don't get the actual files, but for a lot of these other ones, we actually have the APK files. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to go through and take a look of what's in here. And right now I have 30 million apps that are in the database that are active right now. So I'm going to go back and say, hey, I want to look at the ones that are blacklisted. So this is something in it is bad, has a bad URL or a bad piece of code in there. So now this is going to filter down. Now I have 845,000 in here. So let's start looking for some apps. And I'm going to open up the chat because, give me a second, because you might say, hey, let me see this app or that app. So I'm going to change what I'm querying, and I'm going to say the title contains, and let's do WhatsApp Messenger. Okay, so all of a sudden you start seeing all of these app stores appear, okay? And you can see that they're blacklisted. So I'm going to click on the first one and let's take a look. So you get a thumbnail of how it looks like. And you get the description, you get who the developer is, and you get where it's actually located. So this is the type of stuff that we see. And when we sandbox it, you actually see all the URLs that we see that were active when this was sandboxed, okay? So you can see all of these things are active when you're running this app. And you go, wow, that's quite a bit. Now over here are all the permissions. So the permissions in here: disable key guard, install shortcut, download without notification, unmap the file system, Bluetooth admin. This is so I can get access to your cloud messaging, your camera, read your contacts, Bluetooth, uninstall shortcuts, kill background processes, receive user information, all this flashlight, so all these things they're seeing. So these are all the permissions. So if you use an MDM solution and there's certain things that you go, hey, if this app has these features on here, we don't want you to be able to use it, we can actually tell you if those apps have those things on there, okay? Now, we also have all the versions. Yes?
Sorry, just another quick question from the group. So all those permissions and then the image that you just showed earlier, that's all captured from our virtual users?
Correct. So from our virtual users crawling the internet, finding these things, we're able to bring this back in and piece this together in our database to make this available to our customers. Yes.
Thanks.
And this is as like a real user. So like, for example, if I came here and I went here, this is the actual place of where that file is. So it's the real things, okay? So we actually have the APK files as well, and then the files. So when we take a look, we actually look inside the APK and we're able to see all of the different hashes for all the files. So if there's a particular component that's bad or has been modified, we're able to show you exactly which piece it is. It just takes a minute for it to load. So this is a back-end thing that we use. The customers don't generally, they don't have access to this, but this is the type of information that we have. So if you do have an MDM solution or you have executives you're trying to protect, if you ask our team, hey, is this app okay or not, we're able to quickly look it up in the database and we have that information. We also have why it's blacklisted. So inside the blacklist, we look across all the different antivirus vendors and see what piece was blacklisted. It's on the global, it was on the Google Safe Browsing list. If VirusTotal has information about it, and you can see exactly what's happening inside of here. And so we have this capability to look at these types of mobile apps. Now, we can also look at the stores. So we can actually go in and look at particular stores and see what's happening. So about 6 months ago, I went to the University of Merced and did a threat hunting workshop for some of the students that want to be cyber investigators. And while I was there, I have a son, and sometimes they have jailbroken phones. They don't want to buy an app. I always tell my son, I'll pay for whatever app you want. I don't want to have malware in my house. So I asked the students, I said, give me different names of mobile apps, and I'm going to look them up. So if you downloaded a free mobile app that you didn't pay for that you should have, let me look at it and let's see if you should delete it or not. And we had 25 students in there. And out of the 25 students, about 20 students went through and gave me a different mobile app. And out of those, I would probably say about 95% of them, so probably 18 or so of those students, all had a malicious app on their phone that was stealing credit card data, PII, and it was bad. So I'm going to go through and show you a couple more, and then please in the chat, if you want a particular app that you want me to look at, I'll look it up and we can go from there. So like,
hey, Benjamin.
Yes.
Really quick, sorry to interrupt. We had a question going back to the previous data that you were sharing. Had a question about how to access that information on an enterprise account.
So this is a back-end database that for an enterprise account, you don't really see. So like if you're using PassiveTotal Enterprise, it's not part of PassiveTotal at all. It's part of Digital Footprint External Threats, where we have mobile app protection, where you buy the mobile app protection. What that does is we look at your own mobile applications, and then it becomes an event inside of the platform that says, hey, there's a mobile app infringing or appearing to be you, or your app is been posted to another app store that is not your official app stores that has malware on it, for example. So you don't generally see this, but I wanted to give you the glimpse of what we have, the data that we have, and then we'll go through and investigate some of these types of applications inside of PassiveTotal and see how people are attacking them. So for example, when we take a look at this, all these URLs that are active. These are the type of things that you can investigate inside of Passive Total to find out maybe the threat actor that's doing it or the infrastructure that's involved in the back end when that mobile app is active and they're stealing data, for example. So this is the type of thing that you would work with your account team to say, hey, I want to further investigate this mobile app that's infringing against me. Please let me know what's happening. Or if you're using i3 services or Executive Guardian where they're protecting executives or certain aspects of organizations, this is the type of thing that they can say, let's look at your executives' phones, because if they have malware on their phones, they might have the microphone active or the camera. So where they're able to look at the content of what's in the devices and then use that in this database to find the bad stuff and say, hey, these are all bad, and this is the threat actor that's targeting your execs. We need to clear this up and protect it, and don't add apps unless we look it up in the database, for example.
Cool. Thanks, Benjamin.
Okay, so I'll go through a couple more and then we'll jump over to the other platform. So if I come in here, another popular one, let's look at Uber driver. So if you take a look in here, we have all different ones. So for example, here's one in a foreign language. So if I select it, you know, if you were trying to go through and figure out, hey, who is this? What's happening? We put it in Google Translate automatically. So we can actually translate these into your native language. So then you can see this. So in the platform, when this shows up inside of your event, you have the ability to see what it says in the language that you use. But if we take a look, you can see all the different permissions, get accounts, read your permission settings, read your sync settings, kill background processes, get package sizes. Here's to get your messages from the cloud. It's pretty bad. And you can look all the different things that are active. And sometimes you'll even see that there are IP addresses that will be, instead of a DNS name, it's an IP address inside of here. So let's see if we see any of those in here. It's just amazing all the things that are active in this app. It's crazy. And then let's see why it's blacklisted. So virus total, Google Safe Browsing, Google Safe Browsing phishing. So they're stealing credentials and doing phishing into other places. So it's pretty bad. Let's do another popular one that might have some stuff. Let's look at Hulu. Hulu for Android. So here's one. Let's look at this one. And let's see the permissions. Read logs, read contacts, set alarms and uninstall stuff, get your cloud messages, and why it's blacklisted. Wow. So we have all these different things of why it was blacklisted. And then we can look at the files, the versions. So what happens is sometimes some of these are really popular and you can actually have hundreds, if not thousands, of downloads. So when we look at downloads, I can actually go through and tell it, show me apps that have X number of downloads. So here's some that have over 1 million downloads. Let's see. Just watch. And let's see why it was blacklisted. A Trojan, has a Trojan in there. And there's over 1 million downloads. So this is why it's really important that if you're going to put things on your mobile devices, or your kids are going to put things on mobile devices, that they're using the official app stores, because most of these don't appear in the official app stores. They're only on the secondary and affiliate app stores. So if you stay with Apple and Google Play, you're pretty safe. But with a lot of the apps that are on the Android platform, they can tell the app, for example, when you update, you don't have to use the official app store. For example, DJI, I have a drone, and the DJI app, the GoFly app, if I use it from iOS, I have to update from the Apple Store. On Android, it could update from the Play Store or from a different website. They can tell it to go someplace else, which to me is a security issue. But that's in the Android app, they can designate a different app store to update from, which can be scary. Okay. So let's go through, and I'm gonna take off the 1 million downloads, and let's do another one. So let's look at airlines. Okay. So if I come in here and I change this to be airlines, now I could have said look at a domain, look at something in the URL, something in the title, something in the description. There's many different ways to search this data. So if I look at airlines, here's Turkish Airlines, United Airlines. And let's see why it's blacklisted. Okay, another Google Safe Browser. They're doing Phish. Let's look at the versions and the details. So this one is stealing, could steal your accounts. And this is all of the access. So for example, here's one that shows going out to an IP, directly to an IP address. So this is some of the reasons why you have to be safe and stay in the proper app stores. There's no such thing as a free lunch or a free app. It's worth paying for it because all it takes is for them to get your accounts and credentials, and now you don't know what's happening and why your credit card's being used, or somebody shipping Amazon packages around the world. You need to be safe. Let's go into shopping. So if I come into shopping, let's look at IKEA. I recently purchased a bunch of stuff from IKEA. So let's see what we see in here. Okay, so I'll just pick one, IKEA store, okay? So at this allfreeapk.com, a lot of their stuff have malware put into it. So just be careful. Here's all the unmount the file system, kill background processes, read your call log. When you're shopping for IKEA, they need to read your call log. Get your location, get your cloud messaging, process outgoing calls, write to your call log, disable your key guard, set alarms for you. It's pretty bad. And let's look at the version. There's one version, and we can look at the blacklist. And we can see where it's been blacklisted. It's just pretty incredible, all the different pieces that can be added to these mobile apps. That's the official app, and then they can use it for bad purposes. Okay, and I'll do one more. Let's do another shopping one. Let's do Etsy. Some people might want to get some Etsy stuff. Let's see. Etsy online shopping. Okay. Here are all the URLs. Let's see why it's blacklisted. Okay, so these are the different antivirus companies that target it. So this one has Artemis, and it's at the Google Play Store. So you have to be careful. Let's do another one. Reference, let's see. Here's all the different viruses that they said were in here. They all have different names because the vendors might call them different things. So it gets bad. Okay, are there any apps that someone wants to see before we move on to another piece? Going once? Going twice? Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go into RiskIQ, And from here, we're going to look up we're going to do an investigation on Pinchy Spider. And with that, we're going to then do it in passive total, and then we're going to see how we can map it and see how it visualizes. And if there's any links that we wouldn't have seen in the data itself, but when we put it into a map, if there's anything that we can say, hey, these are correlated together. Okay. I will put into the chat the first two things that we're going to look at. So in the chat message, I put two links. And so I'm going to open those up right now. Summer school. Okay. So here's the scenario. So the scenario is that you have a friend that says, hey, we just got ransomware. And what we've done is we have backups. So we're going to blow everything away and we're going to restore from backups. But we were told that they have our credentials, our Windows credentials. So where would they sell our Windows credentials? Because we kind of want to see if that's true or not. But we're not going to pay the ransom. We're just going to go from backup. Can you put the infrastructure together to figure out the extent of this threat actor, and if you can find out where these credentials would be sold on the black market? So if you take a look in here, this is decryptor.cc. Now, one thing I want you to do before we do anything is everything that we're doing is live. They're really bad places. You can't go there directly, because if you go there directly, you're going to probably get malware on your machine or get infected with something. So as a threat investigator, you want to use tools that will go out and reach for you, get the data and bring it back to you safely, like a buffer in between. So like when we crawl the internet, it's like you're visiting the entire internet, but you're not actually going there. So we want to make sure that when we do these examples, don't go to these places directly because they are bad, okay? This is all live data. Nothing in our system is made up. So everything we're doing is a threat actor, is bad, can't visit it, okay? So the first place that we're going to go inside of RiskIQ to keep you safe is this decryptor.cc, okay? So when you run this query, this is inside of our classic view, the PT view that we've used in the past. And I want to walk you through this investigation because we did this last week, but I want to walk you through the investigation again. And from that, I want you to try to figure out the infrastructure and then see if you can map it without a tool. And then we're going to go use a tool that can visualize our data, run these queries, and build a map in real time. And then we're going to do that together. I'm going to show you how it's done. And then later on, you can download a community version from them and do this yourself. And the APIs that we give you, whether you're on the free account with a Gmail or a corporate email, you can do it. But when we run this tool, you'll hear a bing every time a query is run. And some take a lot more queries than others. And you get about 1,000 API queries on the free. If you're on the organizational free one, it's about 3,500. Alex, am I right? Keep me honest.
Yeah,
okay.
That's correct.
And if you're on the paid version, I think it's like 10,000 per user, okay? So it is, we want to give you the capability to run these. So you might not have as many queries inside of the RiskIQ interface, but if you're using the API, you might even have access to other data sets that you normally don't see in the interface, okay? If you're using the API. So, start off with this one, and I want you to take a look at the IP addresses. And I want you to see if there's any other domains that are similar to decryptor.cc that you might find. And I'll give you a minute, and you can pivot by either clicking on one of these, and when you click, it takes you to another place. Okay, it runs a pivot query, and it changes it. I'm going to go back. The way that I like to run these pivots is I right-click and open in a new tab. And the reason for that is if you go down a branch of investigation and you hit a dead end, sometimes you need to go back to the trunk and then go down another branch. And if you're trying to do it clicking on them and building out this chain that's pretty far, it's hard to do. But if you do it through the tabs, and something falls out and is not part of the investigation, you can just close that tab. And then what I do is I come into bookmarks and I bookmark all the tabs when I'm done with my investigation or if I'm working on it. So then I can store them in a folder and I can open them all at one time. And that's what I did here. Was I've done my investigation and I've stored all of my bookmarks in a folder, and I can open them all up, and then I can walk through the investigation. And every time you go to a different tab inside of here, it actually is a different URL. So I can actually save all those together and walk through the investigation. So the first one I want you to look at is if you go to this 94.103.87.78, you notice that there's a decryptor.top, okay? So then I want you to open up decryptor.top and see if you see anything else. So you're gonna open this up in another tab and see if there's something there. So now we have all these new IP addresses. These are all the passive DNS that's associated with this, okay? So one of these IPs will link to another organization, and I think it's this 23.94.187.100. So if you open that one up, you'll see the decryptor.top, but you also see these blackpass.bz. Okay, and if you're not familiar, you go, hey, what is this blackpass website? If I do a search for it in Google, it turns out to be a blackpass marketplace. And this is where things are sold, like credentials, Windows desktop credentials. So we've now figured out that, hey, it goes to this onion link, okay, called blackpassqk3nqfuc.onion, okay? So this is how you would get through an onion browser, Tor network, you would see it. But what's nice is that if I come into here and I search on this blackpass thing, okay, one piece of data that we have is because we're crawling the entire internet and we're bringing in these trackers and cookies and stuff, we also see the Tor hidden addresses, which was that one that was that .onion. And if I right click on that and I open another tab, I can see all of the ones that are associated with it. And I can see over time, this was back 2019, 2020. I can see how this has changed over time. It was the same place, but the domain is different. So we see all the Tor exit nodes. We have all that data in our system. And we're able to link this together, okay? So if I want to visualize what we just did to say, okay, I'm done with my investigation. I've mapped this out, but now I have to give it to somebody that's not really technical. And I have to build up these relationships. Well, I can manually go through and start doing this. But if we go back and we look at certificates, I'm looking at these certificates. I go, hey, it's a Let's Encrypt certificate. I might have tons of things in here that I want to link together to say, is this certificate seen on a different domain or a different IP address? It's a lot of stuff to keep track of. And if I went through these, now I have 12 certificates to look at over time. And over here, there are 16 certificates to look at. And over here, there are 2 certificates. And on this black pass, there's 31 certificates to put together. So if I want to try to build out this map and show relationships, it's kind of hard to do manually. You can do it, but as the investigation gets bigger with the infrastructure, it becomes to the point where you can't see the relationships anymore because you're in the grass, you're in the weeds, and you need to zoom out to be at the mountain to see the big picture. And that's what the Maltego visualizations will let you do. So what I'm going to do now is I have Maltego in here. And let me just quickly show you how I get this set up to be able to use Maltego. So if I go to my account settings, I'm not going to click on it because I don't want to show everybody my API keys. But where it says user and organization, if I click on show, it will show my secret and password, okay? Like what I would need for my APIs. And I use the org one, okay? So I take that org API token and secret, okay? And inside of Maltego, let me just maximize this. I can come to home, and if I come down to passive total, this is where I can install this plugin. They call it a transform, and I will put in my credentials. And so what will happen is Maltego will then allow me to run a query using my API credentials to build out the map. So if I have an initial ILC, okay, so what I'm going to do here, here's my initial ILC, and let me show you how I did that. So I'll bring up my first query. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this. And when I bring this over to the map and I paste it in, Command V, oops, I already have it here. So I'll delete it and I'll paste it. Okay, paste it in here. Sometimes it might show up as a DNS. And if it does do that, if you right click, they have this little option here where I can change it to be a domain. So I can fix it. So if it doesn't get pasted in correctly, I can come in and correct it and tell it what type of thing it was. It was a certificate. It was an IP address. I can fix that. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run some transforms on here. So I'm going to go to passive total. Okay. And I want to run passive DNS. Okay. So I want to find out the IP addresses that were associated with this particular domain. So I come down here and I run that. When I run it, every time you hear a bing is a query, is like an API query, okay? So now I have all of these IP addresses that are associated with it. So if I come over now and I highlight those IPs and I go back and run another passive DNS, I'll find the hosts that were associated with those IPs. So every one of those bing, 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 query, 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 API call. Okay, so it can get pretty costly as you go along. Okay, so now I have all of these domains that showed up, and you can notice that, hey, some of these IPs are cross-connected to another domain in here. Okay, so I'm looking for the one that was like the top one that as we went through. So I'm going to take these particular ones, I'm going to highlight them, I'm going to delete them out. Okay, I'm going to look over here and see these and delete those out. Okay, I'm going to come over here and see this host one, I'll delete that one out. I see these name ones. Some of these have been sinkholed, so they're no longer active. And so I see some for car dealers, car repos. So nothing really associated with what we were looking at before. So I'm going to delete those out. And over here, I'm going to delete those out. Okay. So now I've cleaned it up a little bit. So I'm trying to do this in real time to show you. So I'm going to come over to the map again, and I'm going to click this again. I can change the view of how these look by these maps, and it starts building these relationships together. Okay. So I'm going to go back to the general map. Okay. And I'm going to click on this one and move it over here. And I'm going to pick this one, and I'll pick the domain again. Okay. And now I'm going to run, I only needed these, sorry. I'm going to pick these again. And I'm going to run the passive DNS again. Okay, so now I have more things coming in here. I get more IPs. Okay, so I'm seeing how these are all linking together. I'm going to grab them again, and I'm going to start grabbing the certificates coming in. So I'm going to come in here and say, hey, show me passive DNS again, and then I'll get the domains and get the certificates. Okay. crypto.cc. It gets a little bit hard to grab these and follow along, so give me a second. I'm doing this live, so it's kind of hard, so give me a second. So I'm going to grab those, delete those away. Here's the black pass ones, so I'm going to keep those. I'm going to delete those. Delete these. Keep that top one in there. Delete these. Delete this one. Delete that. Here's all the repo car ones. I'll get those out of here. So this one can disappear. Here's the sinkhole that I mentioned. So they sinkholed it already. And we'll get rid of these. Okay. We're almost done. This was linking to some domain that had a lot of hosting on there that wasn't part of it. So just cleaning those up. Okay, and the last two. Okay.
Hey, Benjamin.
Yes.
We've got a question from someone on the chat. How do you explain how you determined you don't need those?
Well, the only reason why I know, because I did this, I went through and did the investigation and built out the map yesterday to make sure I didn't need them. That's why I particularly know. So what I did was I went through and built it all out, and then saw where the links were, where it wasn't really connected or went out to a branch that wasn't part of the investigation, and I deleted it. So I'm just kind of going through from my previous build yesterday, where I went through and spent a couple hours and built this out to figure out all the pieces that were here. That's how I particularly know for this particular case. But generally what will happen is if I come in here and I tell it, hey, I want to have all the certificates by IP. So for example, certificates by IP address, and I run this, you'll start to see it link it all together with these certificates. So as I come through and I look at the map and I start building these out, you'll see that you'll get a map of how it should come together. So yesterday I went through and I finished on a map like this. So when we look at the relationships of what's here and how the data is going in and out of these websites and the trackers that are associated with it. So if I came in here and said, let me run a transform on the tracker, I forgot to do that. So if I go to trackers, you'll start seeing how some things are outliers in here. And that could be that, hey, that's some area I need to investigate, or it's really not part of it. And in this particular case, they weren't part of the investigation. So when I went through and looked at these outliers yesterday, it wasn't part of everything that interconnected with everything else. So like these particular elements weren't part of it. So as I went through and looked at all the pieces that made this up, it gave me the capability of understanding, hey, what was really part of this and what wasn't. So as these maps get broken out and put together, I can see the relationship of which domains were interconnected with each other and how they all link back to the black pass. And so inside of here, if I came in and say, show me the trackers that associated with this, you can see this is where it goes out to that Tor onion network piece. But that's how you can visualize your data to see, hey, all of these pieces are really part of the same component.
That makes sense. Thanks, Benjamin.
Oh, you're welcome. So the other one I'll just show you I'll bring up a finished map to show you. So if we looked at last week, we did the Small Business Administration website. And with that, we have the real website, okay? And with that real website, we knew that somebody was going in and copying the CSS of that thing, of the real website, so they can duplicate it and do phishing attacks. And from looking at the parent-child relationship, we are able to see which websites were copying it and which ones had the tracker associated with the real website. And as we go through, and if I visualize the data from last week, you can start to see that all of these domains here that are different domains completely have infrastructure that is linked together. So you can start to make the assumption that, hey, if they have the same IP and the same certificate on different domains, then these are related with each other. And this gives you the capability of start looking at your investigation and making assumptions that, hey, these three domains could be linked to the same threat actor that is there. So this is what the visualization capabilities give you when you look at the certificates, you look at the IP addresses, the domains, the trackers. It starts building out these relationships to show you what's going in and out. If a script was being pulled from the real site, if they were referencing links back to the real site to get the images from the real site. This shows you the visualization of what you would do inside of Passive Total. So in Passive Total last week, we did a small business administration one as well. So inside of here, I'll show you, I'll bring that up real quick. And this will bring us over to do some real phishing examples that we're going to use this technique that we did last week. So inside of this for last week, we had a real website, which was the COVID-19 SBA.gov. So if I copy this, this is the real legitimate website. So I'm going to go there. Oops. And this is the login. So if you wanted to apply for care relief to get money for your organization to pay the bills for your employees, this is where you would sign up. And they gave out $810 billion, tons of money. So from here, if we take a look at the host pairs, this is where we started to see those child pair relationships. So if we looked for causes that were CSS imports, for example, we started to see that these three sites were pulling in the style sheets from the legitimate site. So it gives us the capability of looking at those and saying, well, let me look where the child was the real site. And as we start going through all of these things that are either have a link href or a script that are going to the legitimate site, most of these are bad. So there's people that were pulling elements from the real site to duplicate it to do the phishing attack. And so if I want to visualize this out, I can go through and for each one of these, I can run the queries for the tracker, okay, the real tracker from the real website, and find everywhere in the world that tracker is being used. And some are on the real site, some are on some legitimate, but some are on bad sites. So a combination of the two gives me the capability of mapping these out. So as I go through and we do these investigations, we're able to see that all of these bad sites were appearing to be the real legitimate site. So this investigation mapped out looks like this. So as I come through and I can look at those Google Analytic code being used, the real one, it's being seen on all these bad sites. Okay, this one is linked to the real one, but it was linked through a script that's being run there, that's coming out over here. And this one over here was linked via this script and a link going back. So that as you build these out, you can start to see, do they have any relationships with any other things? And that these three actually have relationships between each other. So these three are probably the same threat actor, okay, for sure, because they're using infrastructure that has been shared over time with each other. So this is a way to visualize the data that you have inside of RiskIQ to tell the picture. So if you gave this picture to an executive and said, here's the investigation that we performed, you can write up a report, but you can also have a map. And the map might be an easy way to look at it to see the full extent of how big this is. And the nice thing is that if you ever go back, you can say, show me new IPs, and then expand those IPs, show me new domains, and try to see if they're related visually inside of here and finding those outliers. So I know that Steve Ginty, one of our person that runs research at RiskIQ, will use the visualization maps to be able to go back over time and look at the same threat actor and say, well, last time there was just this IP address that was out on the edge that didn't have anything, but it was related. And then when he runs it, he sees more infrastructure that's associated with new domains. And then he can extend his investigation and go from there. So these will grow over time for organizations. Any other questions that have come in looking at these visualizations? Okay.
Nope, nothing else at this point.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go back into passive total, and we're going to look at a particular domain, a project, and inside there, there's many different domains that are listed there. So give me a quick second, just trying to clean up my desktop a little bit. Okay, file, new tab, here we go. So I'm logging in. And what I'm going to do is we're going to go to the classic PT, and we're going to look for projects, okay? And I'm going to paste this into the chat for you, and then we're going to go through some of these. Okay, so a lot of people have asked, hey, I want to find some interesting phishing ones where I want to investigate a phish. So what we're going to do is we're going to investigate one or two that are here, but then they're going to link back to a real site. And we're going to look at the real site, and we're going to use the techniques I just showed you on the SBA one to find new threat actors that are targeting those people right now. So for example, if you go to any popular domain, let's say you go to PayPal, you go to Apple, you go to WhatsApp, you go to Netflix, you go to any popular things, people are always targeting them. So we can show you the techniques to find who's targeting your organization. And so you can look at your own domain and do these same techniques to see if anybody's going after you. So this is a way to be proactive. So let's look at join WhatsApp, okay? So if we right click and open another tab, we're going to see this bad domain, and it's blacklisted. Oh, wow. And you can see when it was active. It was only active for 4 days that we saw it, okay? And it was in Germany, okay? So now if I want to go through and I want to kind of do some ways to investigate this and see who are they attacking, how do they look like, what's happening, and I want to use open source tools in RiskIQ Passive Tool. So this is going to show you some techniques that you can use our product and other tools that are out there in the world to see what's happening. So if we look at the who is record, let's see what we see. Nada. Thank you, GDPR, there's nothing, okay? Let's look at the certificates. So if we look at the certificate, I open this up, We see cPanel, okay, and we can see all the alternative names associated with this, okay. I can look at the subdomains. I see those, okay. Trackers. So I'm seeing the real WhatsApp tracker information. I'm looking at the components, light speed. Now I'm going to the host pairs. So when I go to the host pairs, this is where I will start to see how it's linked to the real website. So do you see this child host pair? The child name, the child name that shows up here. Here's the website that we're on, and it's reaching into cdn.whatsapp.net. So think of parent-child relationship as that your parents will tell you what to do, and you can tell your children what to do. So you might reach out to your children and say, hey, I need that from you, and take it and bring it back. Or your parent might say, hey, I'm gonna get this from you. Or you might ask your parent, I need that from you, and pull it in. So there's different directions depending on which way you're going. You're either doing a parent relationship or a child relationship. But generally, the way that this one is working is that this one host is reaching and taking from this child the CSS import. So they're bringing that back. They're sucking that in, okay? So if I run this in another tab, let's take a look at this one now. So now I'm not sure what cdn.whatsapp.net is. I suspect, but I'm not sure. But if I go to the who is record, okay, I can see, oh, it's WhatsApp. It's the real WhatsApp. Okay. And I can look at their certificate. Let's see what their certificate is. There's only one. It's from here. Okay, and I can see the IP address associated with it. Great. I look at their trackers. Oh, there's those trackers again that we saw on the bad side. I see all the components. Now, one red flag, you know how you always want to look to see solid analytical leads. If I'm a threat actor, am I going to stand up extra infrastructure I don't want to maintain or have running if I don't need it? No, you're going to be very efficient and cost effective. So when you take a look at a real one, they might have hundreds of components that are running. But if we look at the bad one, they had 2 components that are running. Doesn't mean that it's not legitimate. It just means that, hey, it's suspicious. And if I have multiple suspicious things, I can make an analytical assessment and say, hey, these don't all add up. Hey, it's a free certificate. Hey, there's no who is record. Okay, that may be, might not be. Hey, there's no real components. They're only been up for a couple days. It went from a public IP to a loopback address back to a public IP. I'll be able to see all that. And so that gives me the capability of understanding that. So if we're at the real website now, and I want to try to find people that are targeting my organization, let's say we work for WhatsApp now, how can I look for these phishing things? Well, one thing is we've tagged a lot of these, but the easy way that you can do it is if you come into the cause, and let's look at that CSS import. So if I look for things that are reaching out to the real website, I can start to look at these and start saying, these are bad, okay? I can start to look to see if they are. So I can come into this first one, okay? I can right click, open another tab. So immediately I can look to see how many days it's been up for. It was up for 1 day, okay? I can open this up and I'm gonna go to URL scan IO, okay? Let me add these tools to the chat so you can easily go there, okay? And from here, I'm gonna copy this domain, okay? And I'm going to do a search. I'm not gonna tell it to go out and crawl it right now because it's not active right now. So I'm gonna say, did anyone in the past tell you to go look for it? Nope, not this particular one. Let me go to another one. Let's look at this one. So I'm gonna go to the third one from the list. I'm gonna open that up. I'm gonna copy it. It was up for a few days, okay? And let's come here now. Let's paste that in. Let's search. Nope. But now let's try to say go there directly. Let's see what it shows. Okay. And I'll grab another one now. So let's see. I'll copy this one. I'm going to duplicate this one. Go to search. Okay, here we go, 16 hours ago. And here is a login. Here's a WhatsApp request. So this is the page that they had. So you can now have a way to visualize what it looked like over time, because in IT, we never hear about stuff as it's happening. We're always out of sync. We get told like a day later, hours later, month later, and then they want us to do an investigation and go back in time like Doc Brown and the Time Machine. But with Passive Total, you can do that. You can go back and see what's happening. So we can see, hey, this was only active for 1 day. Nobody submitted anything for a crawl, but RiskIQ on the back end, we probably have the crawl for this. We can probably look in our crawl and say, how did this look like? And see that image of what it looked like at that particular time, because we're doing it all the time. You don't have to submit it. We're doing it for you. But this is a way with open source tools that I can say, how was that screenshot at the time to say that this was malicious, and see what it looked like. So I can do that with URL Scan.io. They have a free version to be able to do that. But we have this data in the back end, and that's part of our enterprise piece, is that when we're monitoring your website, we're finding these for you all the time, doing the takedown and blocking it and protecting your organization. It shows up in this event with all of the data, like the document object model, the links, the images, and then it's really easy for you to look and say, yep, confirm, boom. And then once you confirm something, it's on our blacklist. 10 minutes later, 95% of the world's browsers won't go there. And then within a day to 4 days, the takedown happens. And if it pops up on another place, it just immediately takes over and we do it again. And the whack-a-mole happens, and we're constantly taking it offline and taking care of them that way. So this is how I like you to do a couple of these, okay? So the next one I want you to do is, let's go back now and find who's being attacked. I want you to tell me who's being attacked, and then determine a new active attack that's currently happening, okay? So if we take a look at this list, pick one. So I'm going to open up another window, because I don't want you to see the results of some of these, because I put it in my bookmark. I bookmark some of these. So if we take a look at the next one, I'll tell you the next one I would like you to try. Let's see. Let's do the this one, the verify. So let me open this one up in the tab. I will grab it for you and I will throw it in here. So first of all, tell me who they're attacking. And I'll wait in the chat. So if you can, once you determined who's being attacked, what organization is the victim here, type it in the chat window. So an easy way to figure this out, look at the host pairs. Anybody see anything in there?
We got a couple of responses. I think it's Apple.
It's Apple. Okay, so Apple's being targeted. Okay, so if I wanted to see this image, I could come here and for free, I can just go out to URL Scan.io and I can go to search. And if I type this in, .com. See all these failed? I have to go to one that's not failed. And here we go. And there's my Apple ID. This is where they want my Apple ID. So this is like when my parents would say, it looked like the real website. I put my credentials in. Oh, okay, Dad, you need to change them. So this is what you see, okay? So now if I want to find a current one that's happening right now, what's the way I can do it? So couple different ways. So I can come here and click on the child that's here, okay, that's being referenced. So now that I'm in here, this is the real website. So again, I can go to the host pairs and go, dang, 14,000. Okay, but I want to define this and figure out who's doing it. Well, I can look to see who's doing these CSS imports. Okay, who's copying these things, and start to look. So if I come in here, let's see, some might be legitimate, some might not be. So like if I see this one, open this one up in another tab, it's been blacklisted. Okay, blacklisted back in June. It was only up for 2 days. So I can right click on this, copy it. I can come here to search. And 2 months ago, let's see. Did I copy the right thing? Yep. Well, this was iCloud.com. .p. It's not the full URL. Cut it off. Let's see. Yeah, they only have iCloud, so it wasn't searched. But this is how you can go through and find people that are attacking your organization. Is to look at the host pairs and who's referencing you, who's using your assets. And if it's not you, it's not a partner, most likely it's bad. So this is how you can go through and start figuring these things out, and looking at real infrastructure and finding the bad. Okay, so you can always keep your skills up by going to a popular domain, looking at the host pairs, getting the child-parent relationships, and looking, for example, at who's doing a content in the style sheet, sucking in the style sheet for the website. Generally, that's not really done unless you're duplicating the website or doing something with it, but that's an easy way to find it. Or looking at scripts going to a bad place, for example. So let's go back and let's look at another one. So we have idnetflix.com. Okay, let's take a look at this one. Okay, and I'm going to open up here. I'll scan IO so we can see this one. So we're looking at this bad website. Let's look at the certificate. Where did they get their certificate? Okay, 0 SSL. Okay, we look at the subdomains, a bunch of different Netflix assets. Let's look at the host pairs. Oh, this asset.nflxext.com. So this particular website is where all of the images are stored for Netflix. All like the movie images, the DVDs, all that type of stuff are in there. And so people reference this in their bad websites to pull from the real good one. So let's take a look at the host pairs. And we can see that Netflix is really using this. Codex.netflix is really using that. But as I filter, let's look where the cause is an import. And let's look at Bitcoin Pro. Let's see if I open that up in a new tab. It's been up for a few months. It's blacklisted. Search. Okay, nothing there. Let's go to home and let's run a real search. And it will go out there and start looking at it. I'll go back and let's see if we can pick another one. Here's a .pl. Let's open that one up in another tab. Okay, it's only been up for a few days. 7, there's a week. So it's been up for like less than 2 weeks. Resolving blacklist. Let's look at the who is. Nothing there. The certificate. Let's see if it's a Let's Encrypt. Yeah, Let's Encrypt. And the components. Few components in there. Host pairs. Okay, so they're referencing the real site. So if I wanted to see what this is, new tab to the right. And let's look for search. Here we go, 6 days ago. Netflix sign-in, okay? So this is the way that you can quickly start getting your skills up to be proactive on your own stuff. You can do it through looking at your own cookies, looking at your own trackers, your Google Analytic codes, things like that. But if you look at the internet intelligence graph that's made up through these host pairs, you're able to see who's going in or taking things out of your website. So it's really easy way to do that. And here, now it doesn't show that it's bad, this Bitcoin Pro, but they probably had they were probably compromised for a period of time where they were referencing the site here, the Netflix site. Any questions on anything that we're seeing right now? Let me try something real quick. Let me see if I can do this. I'm bringing up Maltego real quick. Hold on. Maltego has an issue with multiple screens. I have 2 screens running, so I have to open it when it's small, and on the proper screen, close it, then open it, and then expand it out. So give me 1 second. Let's see. So I'm going to maximize this now. Let's see if it works. Yep. So I'm going to make a new map. Okay, so you can see right here, it wasn't the right, it should be a domain. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to change this to be a domain. Okay, so now that it's a domain, I want to see all the parent relationships because I want this to be the child. So I'm going to come in here and say parent pairs. Okay. There's going to be a lot. I might have exceeded my quota. Let's see, do it one more time. Yeah, that's too many. My license in Maltego won't let me. But you can map those out and see the big relationship. It will be pretty spectacular. I'll have to do that next time. I'll have to figure out why it didn't populate. But everything that's listed here are some interesting phishing attacks against popular brands. And if we take a look, if I go back one, we have some for July. We have about every week or so, we add new ones that are in here. There's PayPal Objects is another one that gets attacked quite a bit. So these are all different ones that we can use as a reference. But it's important to understand that the techniques that you're using to look at this from a known good or a known bad are directly transferable to your own organizations. Like if you have an IOC from Firewall or EDR solution, you can expand that out to see the full impact of what happens. Or you can take something that you normally don't have access to, like the Google Analytic numbers and codes that are used, and look at that in the world to say, hey, marketing, instead of me looking to see if anybody's referencing our analytic codes inside of Google or Facebook or inside of YouTube, I'm going to run a query inside of Passive Total where I don't need to go and get permission for a day to look at this. and I'm going to see everywhere in the world where that code is being used. That's some of the ways that you can find these bad things and then figure out the entire infrastructure chain that makes it up to put it together. Now, one thing I wanted to mention is inside of the classic PT, think of this as a way to find something that's bad, and most of the time it's malware. To be able to go look at your infrastructure or look at something to see if you get a hit. So before we had that decryptor.cc. If I search for that indicator, I can immediately see with inside of the classic and inside of the new PT interface, I get some resolutions and everything. When I run in this new interface, it doesn't take anything away from the number of queries you can do a day. This doesn't count at all. Only in the classic PT does it count. But it also brings up things that you might not have been aware of, like, for example, articles. And these articles come in where we give you a description, we give you community and enterprise indicators. And I mentioned this earlier inside of the talk, where the community indicators are free to everybody, whether you have a free account or paid account. And this is what's in the open source intelligence articles that are out there. This particular one, RiskIQ wrote. And so there's only community indicators because we're telling everybody everything that we know about it. But if it was from another vendor or another organization that published something, those community indicators would be on the community tab, which are here, and you can click and jump around. Or the enterprise ones would be the ones that our threat researchers took that initial investigation and expanded it to bring it to the full extended picture of what that infrastructure chain looks like. But please remember that this thing is very useful. I can come in here, for example, and type in Iran and see all the articles around Iran. And you can see all the certificates, you can see all that stuff. If I look at, let's look at Panda. Here's all the ones talking about basically China threat actors coming in here. If I type in China, okay, here's all the different skimming kits and things that are being done inside of it. And there's 5 pages of stuff. So this is a good place. Yes.
One thing I'd add to that too is it's interesting to take a look at the tags, because sometimes in the case of China, you can see if there's Chinese threat actor group tags there, and then click on that, and that will open up more infrastructure.
Great idea. So that's a thank you for mentioning that. So yeah,
from the data card specifically.
From which one?
From the data card specifically. So if you go back, yep, and then so the preliminary data up at the top. If you go scroll up, yep, and then expand tags out where you see 10.0 UK. Yep, that's what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then you hit China, and now I see everything in China. And this now pops into the classic PT where I can now see everything that's been tagged with that. Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. So this gives you the capability of seeing all of this data in a new way. So we're trying to always make threat investigations faster, showing the unknowns that you didn't know about, and making you smarter in all of your investigations. So when we go through and we do a search, you'll notice that there's analyst insights. These were common questions that analysts would ask us, like, hey, what do you do when you first examine a domain or IP? They go, first, I want to make sure that it's not blacklisted, if it's been blacklisted or not, and it's revolving, or when it was registered. It was just registered 2 weeks ago, or when was a new subdomains added, how many records share information with this domain. And then you'll see some black stuff in here sometimes. And the reason why you see that in mine is because I have the CrowdStrike app installed. So we're using CrowdStrike internally. And with that, we're querying the CrowdStrike Falcon system to pull in the threat intelligence, but also any internal system. So there's 2 different APIs, Intel and the one for the endpoint, where we bring and we merge that data together. So I'll show you something real quick. I'll just bring up Let me see where I can show that real quick. So this is a way that you can bring your internal logging with our external view of the internet and merge them together. So for example, we have this dl2.dropbox.-download-eu.com. So inside of here, I get all the information, but I also get to know it's a get and go loader, high confidence malicious, it's a downloader, it's part of the delivery part of the kill train, it's criminal. So I can look at the CrowdStrike tab. I have this tab because we have that integration turned on inside of CrowdStrike. I can see which desktops have actually visited this site. So as you're going through and doing an investigation, we're pulling that internal data and bringing it forward to you to give you that inside-outside perspective. We also have this with Splunk as well, and other vendors. So as I go through and I look at the WHOIS records, I can look in here and say, hey, this is a fake privacy protection email. It's not going to be whoisprotect@hotmail.com. So if I open that up in another tab, I can see all the domains that were registered with that particular email address. And you can see some have been tagged phishing, some have not. Or I can come in and look at the telephone number. And if I look at that telephone number, I now see all of these other ones that were registered here. And if I see that, hey, there's this OneDrive-en live.com, if I open that up in another tab, I can take a look and see, oh, I have another hit on this. So I have another desktop that went there. And if I look at subdomains, I can go down to different ones and say, did anybody else go there? I can look at another one and say, oh, no one hit this one, but they hit the main one. So it gives me the ability to see that internal data inside of Passive Total to see if it affects your organization. So that's something that's pretty unique with our offering, to give you that 360-degree visibility with the inside that you have and the outside that we have, to close that security gap and hopefully take it away for you. Okay. And the last thing I'll show is what I showed last week, which was the Jenkins example. So let me bring that up. So inside of here, there's an article about a vulnerability, a Jenkins vulnerability development tool. So as you go through the article, you can read about these and find out more information about how it was referenced, where we got this information. But there's some community indicators that are in here. And this community indicator, if I open this up, will show me everywhere in the world that this component is running. So there's 14,000 domains that have it. And I think there's over 1 million IP addresses that have this, and I'll just let that load. Yeah, there's over 1,196,000 IP addresses, and you can actually see the version number. So as we're communicating and grabbing those banners and the ports and find out what's installed and running, we're mapping these out to find out what's there. So this gives us the capability of really truly understanding all the information that's there. But inside of the app as well, give me a quick second. I'm just changing a workspace for me real quick. So when I click on this next one, you'll see it. So if I go back to here and I look at this description, if you have our digital footprint product that I mentioned earlier that you can sign up to get a free snapshot. So I have this worldview to say, hey, over 1 million machines out there have this Jenkins on there, but do I have it internally? Are we affected by this? So this could be like when your boss walks up and says, hey, there's a 0-day that came out for this. Hey, are we affected? And you're like, I don't know. Well, inside of here, if I click on this, it will automatically log me into the digital footprint piece, where I can come in and see all of the machines that are listed and say, we have 232 that have Jenkins that could be affected by this. and it gives me the capability of seeing that inventory that we're constantly crawling on the internet for you to keep this updated, to find out IP address changes, new domain was added, new components were updated, a new JavaScript was loaded. All that information is in here, and as I go through and I look at the inventory, I can go through and see the ports, how it's part of your was added into your inventory. I can see those ports that are open in the actual header that came back, so we can look at these over time. I can look to see that, hey, Jenkins is installed on here. It's there, the certificates, who to contact if there's an issue. All this information is part of the RiskIQ platform. So what we're trying to do is to give you the capability of understanding whether something is something that's out there, if it's how big the problem is and how does it affect you, to make you smarter and faster with inside of your incident response. That's the whole point of our threat portal, is to take that open source information, extend it for you, so you can start off on a better footing and to be able to tackle these things that you see out in the world. So Barrett, are there any other questions before we end today?
Yeah, Benjamin, there was a question around if someone has a community account, and looking at a community account, how do I get extended API access or more history?
Okay, great question. So I'll bring up my slide deck real quick, and I'll bring up one of that first slides that I gave out here. So give me a quick second. And let me unhide this slide. Okay, so let me present this real quick. So right now, if you have a free email account, you're seeing 14 days of history, okay? And you don't, in the UI, you don't see certain things. If you're using the professional version, that means that you're using an organization, so you're a vetted like security professional. We're giving you 90 days of passive DNS certificates and hashes, and we give you the services, the ports and headers, going back the last 14 days. The enterprise ones see everything in the UI. Now, when we take a look at the licensing, if we take a look at the API calls, we're letting you see everything with the APIs. So if you're using the APIs, you're going to see all the different types of data. We're not just limiting you to those particular fields that you see in the UI. So you get 1,000 per month API calls. If you're using your organization email, you're going to get 3,500 per month API calls. And if you have a paid account, we're giving you 10,000. So we really want you to be able to run those queries and to use other tools to bring that data in to enrich what you currently are using inside your organizations. Because if you can take that outside information into your internal systems and make them smarter, it makes you better, it makes you safer. And that's what we're trying to do for you, is to take that full loop to make it that you're able to truly utilize the full extent of the knowledge that you have to make your life easier at work. Smarter and faster incident response, discovering unknowns.
Awesome. Thanks, Benjamin. We're right at the top of the hour here. So for those of you who we haven't been able to answer your questions live, we'll follow up directly very soon. As you see on Benjamin's slide, you can always reach out to success@riskiq.net with any additional questions. Thanks to Benjamin, and thanks to Alexandra for a great workshop. And finally, thank you all for attending, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.